Wabash Carnegie Public Library Oral History Program, interviewing Mrs. Faye Wakefield at her home, 291 West Main Street, Wabash, Indiana, Wednesday afternoon, December 5th, 1973. Well, I'm happy to be here, Mrs. Wakefield, and the first thing I want to ask you about is, what was your father's full name?
Emery P. Daywalt.
And your mother?
My mother's name was Minnie Moore Daywalt.
All right. And when were you born? What day?
I was born July the 5th, 1888.
And
out in the country.
Where?
About a mile and a half southeast of Wabash, across the old covered bridge off that way.
Well, what did your father do for a living?
He was a carpenter, and he worked at the Big Four and did a lot of carpenter work.
And were your father's parents living when you were a little girl?
Well, his father was. Yes, his father was, but then none of the mother wasn't.
Yeah. Do you remember Grandpa Daywalt then?
Yes, I remember him. And
what did he do?
Well, he was a carpenter also, and he was from Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And
had any of them been Civil War veterans?
No, but my grandfather on mother's side was.
Mm-hmm. And who was he?
His name was Alec Moore.
Yeah. And what did he do for a living?
Well, he's a farmer.
He was a farmer also. And he had been a Civil War veteran?
Yes. He was, well, he was born in 52 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, he must have been rather young then when he went away. Yeah. And did he ever tell you children as you were small? Did he ever tell you his war stories and that?
Well, yes, a lot of them. Yeah. And he even, we even had a piece of the bread that they had, what is it called?
Hardtack.
Hardtack.
Yeah.
And, well, we were very proud of him.
Yeah. Did he remain active in veterans groups?
No, he was farmer, and they lived quite a piece out there, and, well, he didn't have time.
Yeah. And how many were in your family?
Just the two, Sister Pearl and myself.
Yeah. And how much older was she?
She was 4.5 years older.
And what's the earliest thing that you remember as a child?
That's what?
The earliest event or anything that happened that you can remember as a child?
Well, no, nothing, only just child life.
Yeah.
This little place where I was born, called Choketown, was a wonderful place to raise kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we could fish and go to the woods and pick flowers and slide down the hill and everything. Mm-hmm. So we had a wonderful time.
Yeah. What did your house, what was it like?
Well, there was 2 rooms upstairs and 4 downstairs. It's remaining out there in Choketown. Mm-hmm. And it's the 3rd house across the bridge, going towards the fountain. Mm-hmm. And it was just home to us. In the first place, my father had moved it from the top of the hill down to where it was a schoolhouse, and he remodeled it. And I think, well, up till the time that these people bought the house, you could see where some of the kids had printed carved their initials and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Now that you're 85 years old, have you ever gone back to see the house?
Oh, yes. It hadn't been a very long time ago. And, well, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
It's just like, you go riding around, and so...
Tell me about going to school. What you remember of going to school and that?
Well, shall I?
Yes, fine. Just tell me.
When I was 6 years old, I lived a mile southeast of Wabash, a place called Choketown, About 13 families lived there, and a flour mill was the only building, and it's still remaining. My sister and I had to go through the old covered bridge on South Wabash Street, a short distance east of the present bridge. We had to walk to the old Miami school building, and we were glad to get to the old bridge as we could get rest and get out of the wind and snow. The bridge was tore down in 1894. We were always afraid to go through the old bridge. The tramps would often sleep there. We would sometimes get a ride on a coupling pole of a wagon, and were happy when a sleigh came along. It was hard walking, for the snow would be about a foot deep with a crust on it. Mother dressed us warm with 2 buckled galoshes, wool clothes, and a big brown veils, mittens, and hoods. We had to carry our books and dinner buckets, and as I was chunky, Sister carried the dinner bucket. School took up at 9 a.m. until 12 noon. We went to the basement and ate our dinner back at 1:30 p.m., in class until 4 p.m. Now they get out at 3. We didn't have the modern restrooms they have now. We had 5 minutes rest period. No sanitary flush water toilets. We used slates to write on in number 1 with a slate pencil, and I still have mine. There were 8 rooms, number 1 to number 8, with 8 teachers, 1 teacher for each room. Mrs. Florence Markley was the principal. We had to drink out of a bucket of water with a long-handled dipper if you didn't have your folding up cup. Twice I was transferred to the high school building on West Hill Street. My alma was too crowded, so room 2, 3, 4, and 6, all the kids below Hill Street had to go there. There was a smaller room on the 2nd floor where the library started. I think I am the only living person left to cross the bridge to go to school at Old Miami. Now kids don't walk, they ride. Maybe the hardships have given me the good health I have had only in the last few years. When I reached 80th year, I am now past 85. My sister's name was Pearl Daywalt Williams. She died in 1970 at age of 86. My name is Faye Daywalt Wakefield, and my parents were Emery P. and Minnie Moore Daywalt. The first Miami school burned down during Christmas holiday and burnt all of Sister's books in 1893. Another one was built, and I think it caught on fire, but they remodeled it, and that was where I went to school. Now they have the nice modern school.
Yes. Do you remember your teachers back at Miami School in those
Yes.
days? Who were they?
Number 1 was Margaret Robertson. And number 2 was Oni Palmer. Number 3 was Bertie Lamport. Number 4 was Oni Palmer, and later I had her in number 6. And she died just a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And number 5 was Clara Hass. She married Walter Bent. Mm-hmm. Number 6 was, of course, Hattie Waite at the high school. And number 7 was Carrie McHenry. And number 8 was the dearest teacher I ever had, Mrs. Florence Markley.
Mm-hmm. Then you went to high school.
Yes, I went to high school about 3 years.
3 years.
I failed in German. I had to take another subject, and I didn't want to, so I thought money was, so I got a job.
Yeah. Was the importance of a high school education as relative important as it is today?
Well, yes, but I didn't like biology, and I didn't like mathematics, mm-hmm. and I would have to have taken another subject after I failed in German. I just thought, I took business course, and it was only 2 years. So,
who was the principal in those days at the high school?
Why, Addie Baylor.
Addie Baylor, yes.
And Mr. Gleason was the assistant.
Yeah. Did you have to pay to go to high school in those days?
Well, no, only taxes, you know.
Yeah.
Father, we lived here in town. We moved to town when I was 12 years old.
You moved to?
From Choketown to town.
Now, where did you live in town?
Well, our first place was on South Miami Street. And we lived there about 3 years when a flood came, 1902. And we moved then down here on Market Street. And
where did you live on Market Street?
well, there's this third house here on the north side of about 323 or something like that, and then the last place was 388 West Market Street.
So you quit high school and you wanted to make some money. Where did you take a job?
Well, I went to the telephone office. I worked there from 1905 till 1909, and I gave a little talk on what I did several months ago at the telephone office. And we got, when they were having their strike, they were getting about $2 and something an hour. I got $3.50 a week. Later, I got $5.
What did you have to do? What was your job?
Well, I was an operator. We had, there was 8 of us girls, and we had 2 shifts. And they had the boards, and little discs would come down, and we'd plug in, and then we'd have to push those things up when they called. And now, it was over Bickle's shoe store.
That would be on South Miami Street, almost to Market Street.
And, they had one wire chief, and the office and the toll and the local was all in one room, so you know it wasn't a big affair. And, then they built the building where, it is now, but then they had built 2 buildings, and this present building. But boy.
What did the telephone company? What were the hours in those days?
Well, we would change from 10 to 4, and then 6 to 9, and then 1 week, and then would be from 6 to 10, and then 12 to 6, and then every other Sunday we would have off. And
did they have a night operator in those days?
yes, they had 2 of them. One would stay until 12 o'clock, and the other till about 4 or 6, till the girls came on, you know.
Were there many long distance calls in those days?
Well, I would say that there was, for the time being, you know. We had, I would think about over 900 patrons. And, of course, there was a lot of business phones, too. And, my brother-in-law was the troubled man. He rode a bicycle in the country, and then they had 2 other fellows that would take care of the city, and they had 1 truck. Now,
did the telephone company? Did you ever get a raise from this $3.50?
yes, I got $5.
$5. Was that good money in those days?
Huh?
Was that good money in those days?
Well, we thought it was. I bought my piano with savings, and of course, Mother and Father helped me.
Did you were living at home then also?
Yes.
Yeah. What did you do after you left the telephone company?
Well, I don't know. I worked different places. My last job, I worked in the bank from 1918 to 1925 in the at that time it was called the Farmers and Merchants Bank, and then they merged with the old Wabash National and the First National Bank now.
What was your job there?
Well, I was a teller, and well, at first I was a machine operator, and then towards the last I was a teller.
And then where'd you go from the bank?
Well, I worked for Sam Rose I was bookkeeper at the junk shop. That was my last job in 1951.
1951.
My brother-in-law died, and I came up here. And, so.
Yeah. Well, so you've really worked you were really a career girl.
That's why I quit school. I wanted to get some.
Yeah. So you were really a career girl there for about 45 years, weren't you?
Something I don't remember.
Yeah. Did you feel that the pay was adequate all those years?
Oh, you always want more.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, Mother would make her own bread, and we had all the good stuff. But when we had to buy bread, we got 6 loaves for a quarter.
Mm-hmm. What was recreation? What did you do for recreation around Wabash in those days when you were a working girl before you were married?
Well, just ordinary. I like to dance, and I didn't care for sports.
Mm-hmm.
And well.
Where would you go dancing?
Oh, the different lodges and places like that. I had belonged to the Wabash Rebecca Lodge 66 years.
Well, isn't that interesting? Was the Rock City Gardens big in those days for dancing and that?
Well, we had the Rock City, yes, and but it, of course, wasn't anything like it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Just regular meals, a place like that.
Mm-hmm. Didn't they have a dance hall there too?
No, it's down there where it was now.
Yeah. Did you ever go down to Boyd Park then?
Oh, on the streetcar.
Yeah, tell me about that. What was it like when you got down there? What did they have?
Oh, lots of, they would have shows every Sunday, and we would go down on the streetcar, and of course there would be a lot of, wouldn't be very much room, but they would even go and sit on top of the car. They had to go down there, and they would have a little bit of boating and stuff like that, just like down here at the park.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe they would have dancing. And,
Did you ever go to the Eagles Theater or any to watch, or was Harder's Opera House still going when you were younger?
Yes, I have. The Opera House was built the Eagles Theater was built in 1905,
Mm-hmm.
and this house
that we're in today
was built by the architect with some of the wood that he had helped himself.
Mm-hmm. And he built this house?
He built this house.
And then did he live in it?
No.
No. He just built it as an investment?
He sold it.
In other words, I look at this lovely woodwork and everything else, I'm assuming that this lumber came out of the Eagles Theater.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I wonder how much he sold the house for when he got it built.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Yeah. Do you remember when the opening of the Eagles Theater?
Yes, but of course, well, some of these things I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
do you remember some of the actors and actresses that do they ever come to mind that came to the Eagles Theater back in those days?
Not personally, but then, well, they had some real good shows,
Mm-hmm.
and of course a lot of vaudevilles, and well, I used to go to the old opera house.
What was that like? Could you describe that to me?
Well, the stair steps are still there by pennies.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, you would go up, and then they had a big, long place, and then they had a balcony. But, it was just like old times.
Yeah. Was that lit by gas lights, the old opera house?
I suppose.
Yeah.
I just don't remember.
Do you remember any shows that you ever saw there?
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Yeah. Do you remember who the actor was?
No.
Or actress or any? Yeah. Well,
No.
what impressed you about seeing Uncle Tom's Cabin?
Well, when little Eva died,
Uh-huh.
I cried.
You cried. And how old would you have been then?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Were you working? I mean,
No.
this before you went to work.
No.
Tell me how you met your husband. How did you meet him, first of all?
I've been married twice,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well, your first husband his name was what?
Harry Oates from Huntington.
Yeah.
And
How did you meet him?
well, he and a friend of his came down to Wabash to see another friend of mine down there on Marcus Street. And so this fella called up and wanted to know if I would take a blind date, which I did. I met him up at the streetcar, and then I married him in 1912.
Uh-huh.
And he was drowned in Waverly, Missouri in 1913.
Mm-hmm.
And then I married Mr. Wakefield, in 1921.
Uh-huh. What was his first name?
William.
William.
And he was the secretary at the Elks at that time.
Uh-huh.
So,
And you working at the bank, I think you said at that time?
well, I was working at the bank.
In 1921.
And I'd take my vacations. I was allowed 2 weeks vacation, and I'd take a month, and I went to Florida for 4 years. Before that, where I was married. And then I went to Cuba once.
Mm-hmm.
And then while we were married, we took a trip to Montreal and New York and Boston. And when I was on the day they were in Boston, they were decorating the place for Charles Lindbergh. He was coming to that day for make a big celebration.
Yeah.
And then Mother and we took a trip to Niagara Falls. And I took another trip down to New Orleans and side trips. And then Mother and I went to California in 1911.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to go to the four corners of the earth, but I got married.
You got stopped, huh?
I had to stop.
Yeah. When did your mother die?
Mother died in 1943.
How old was she?
She was 82, and my father died in 1935. He was 82. So we've had a good life.
You come from a line of long livers, and yeah. Did Mr. Wakefield? What did he do most of his life?
He worked for his brother in the grocery. His brother was Lou Wakefield, and they had a grocery on West Canal Street.
Mm-hmm.
And then his health failed him, and he worked down to the B. Walter Company about 4 years.
Mm-hmm. And he died in what year?
He died 1947 with diabetes.
Tell me, what was it like on the streetcars around here in the old days?
Oh, well, I took a lot of trips, and it was just bumpity bump.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd go to Lafayette and Fort Wayne and stuff like that.
On the interurban.
On the interurban.
Yeah. Do you remember the first automobile that you saw?
That I saw?
Yes.
Yes. It was Bill Newman. He had the hotel. His mother had the hotel. And it was a high seat. And, well, anyhow, I can't describe it.
Was that quite a sensation in town?
Oh, boy, that was something.
Do you remember when you got your first automobile?
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. My brother-in-law had a machine, but I had one a little while, but I just didn't like to ride.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember when radio came in?
Yes, I had been to Chicago, and my nephew was trying to install something, and so we went to his house, and he fixed it up, and so we got Edgewater Beach Hotel
Mm-hmm. In Chicago, yes.
In Chicago.
That would have been dance music probably. In
Well,
those days.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So,
Did you remember the first telephone that you had?
no, but I remember the first telephone that was out in Choketown at the mill.
Mm-hmm.
And
You were just little children when the first telephone that choked
well,
out?
I see, I lived out there till I was about 12.
Uh-huh.
And I just can't tell when they had the telephone put in there.
Did you go down and use the telephone then? Would you go to use
Well,
it?
once in a while, but Mother didn't want us to be a nuisance.
Mm-hmm.
So one time there's a mill had a door to go down to the basement, and there was an old man named Jenkins, and sister and her friend were sitting in the yard across from the mill, and this old man had snakes. And he had been drinking, and what they call snakes, and he would sit there and he would shake his boots to get the snakes out.
Did it scare you?
Well, they didn't like it very well.
Do you remember the first airplane you saw?
Yes.
And what was the occasion?
Well, they had one here to demonstrate it. Well, I thought that was wonderful. Then I went to Florida and I saw the first hydroplane down there, the one that in the water, That was something. So,
have you always lived here in Wabash? Have you always enjoyed it?
yes, I wouldn't want to live in it. I lived in Fort Wayne, and I wouldn't want to live and I lived in Huntington. I wouldn't want to live any place else. Mm-hmm. It's a good place because we don't have the storms like they do in some places, and we have places that you can go to and enjoy yourself, and I think it's an ideal place.
Do you remember much about the Ku Klux Klan in 1920?
No, I don't remember. They had a big demonstration down here at the park,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Did Mr. belong?
no, he didn't belong.
Yeah.
And Mr. Isaac Beitman, sister tells about him, and so there's going to have, he's a Jew, and they was going to have this demonstration, and so someone said that Mr. Beitman went down there, and he was seen, and when he come back, they said, well, what did you think about the Ku Klux Klan? And he said, well, I don't think it's right. So someone made the remark, why, it was awful for a Jewish fella to go to see him. Well, he said he wanted to see what they were doing. They had their hoods on, and it was down below where the tennis court is now.
Do you remember much about the Depression?
The what?
Depression?
No. I just lived an ordinary life, and I took things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I didn't have things like I should, but I made it.
You didn't have any financial problems
No.
or anything like that?
No.
No.
Oh, maybe. Daddy always said if you don't save the pennies, the dollars will come.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I had to skimp on the pennies. I don't know.
You were going to tell me about these slates here. What was the story on those?
Well, my sister was always very particular.
Mm-hmm.
This is her whole skate. This is mine.
Mm-hmm.
I was careless. I broke it.
You broke half your slate. Were those expensive slates?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Do you remember can you remember when you worked at the telephone company what downtown Wabash looked like?
Well, it didn't look like it did now, but most of the old buildings were there. And, when I was going to Miami School, where the Eagles Theater was a beautiful, big, old brick house with iron fence around it, and a Jewish family by the name of Marks, Dave Marks, lived there. Well, across the street, east, was a big old boarding house, and they would have the roomers and boarders, and they'd be out there washing with a washpan on a bench, and they had a big old pear tree. Oh, those are good pears.
There was no indoor plumbing in the boarding house then?
Oh, I suppose not.
Yeah, they would be outside washing their face. Yeah. Be a little cool on a day like today, wouldn't it? How long have you lived in this house here then?
Well, my brother-in-law died in '51, and I came here, and so I've lived here ever since. Well, he died in March the 3rd of '51, and I came here then and lived here ever since.
Yeah.
And now sister left me the home, and it's mine.
Good.
So,
What was your religious preference growing?
First Methodist Church.
Have you always belonged there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has the church changed over the years?
Oh, yes. They have different ways of doing things, you know, that everybody has.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't gone since I've been feeling so bad. But the minister called on me, and I was very pleased to see him.
Do you remember any outstanding ministers that they had?
No, not well. Here's Brother Lamport.
Mm-hmm.
He was the first one. He was at the minister in the old where the Catholic Church is now.
Mm-hmm.
And I corresponded with him, and he died in California. And,
He was, but you're probably your favorite minister then over all the years?
well, he would. His wife had died, and my grandmother lived out where a place where I was born, out south of town. And well, anyhow, he liked to eat, and he would come about every Sunday, and so that's why I was so much more acquainted with him. But I expect I was about 6 or 8 years old.
What political philosophy did you follow all those years?
Well, my father's family were Democrats, but he turned Republican. My grandfather more was Republican because he belonged to the North in the Civil War, and so.
You've always followed the Republican
Yes,
Party
I
then?
have.
Yeah.
Well, I vote if I think you're the best man, I'll vote for you, regardless of politics. And but I voted this last time, but I ain't going to vote again.
Yeah. What in looking at national government now? What do you think over the years? Is it your
Well,
confidence?
it's getting rottener.
Yeah. But you've lived through Harding and his monkey shines and
Well,
some of the other things that have gone on.
well, it's just like daily life. There's good things and there's bad things, and it's too bad that all this trouble has happened. And well,
Disappointed, you would say then.
I'm very much disappointed because, well, of course, the newspapers can tell a lot of untruth about things, and so I think that's mostly trouble. So,
You know, you and I were talking the other day. We were talking, and we talked about getting old or growing old. And what was your remarks at that time?
well, to tell you the truth about it, I didn't feel like I was 85, but now that I'm getting a little feeble, I've enjoyed my life. I've had a very good life, and but it's nothing. I don't belong to society. I'm just a plain, ordinary person. I like to be happy and you want to say.
Yeah, you've had remarkably good health all your life.
Yes. And well, my sister had been in the hospital 3 times in 4 years, and that had brought my health down. And so,
You and your sister were pretty close to each other, weren't you?
yes, very much.
Yeah. Well, she was living, and you were both married. Did you and your husband see each other quite frequently? And
Well, she made a remark which has helped me. She said she don't believe that any 2 sisters living together got along as well as we did.
Mhm.
So I felt pretty proud of that.
Who did the cooking?
Well, I did most of it,
Uh-huh.
but I wasn't a good cook.
You wasn't a good cook. You weren't a good cook.
But no.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably some good training out there in Choketown.
Well, we had everything out there, all kinds of fruit, and Mother would dry apples and dry corn and make her cottage cheese,
Mm-hmm.
homemade bread, cakes and pies.
Food taste better to you then?
So,
Did the food taste better?
oh, it did. Oh, now I'll have too much of this. To keep them from spoiling, whatever you call it. Yes, the bread would be wonderful. And we had a cow, so butter and everything.
Hey, tell me what it was like when you were a little girl, living with your mother and father and your sister. What was Christmas like?
Well, it was wonderful until I found out there was no Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
We had Mother and would set a plate on the floor or a chair, and well, maybe sisters would be on the chair and mine would be on the floor to keep it, and she would have candy and apple or something like that, and then we would maybe have one present. My sister loved books and I loved dolls, and until a few years ago my sister sold her doll head for $7.50, and this doll head was going to be put on a body to be in a picture show.
Mm-hmm. I'll be there.
Mrs. Sharples bought it.
Uh-huh.
And so
Did you have a tree? Would you have a tree?
is what?
Did you have a Christmas tree?
No, but we didn't have a Christmas tree. The first one I had was, of course, it was in a way mine, but my neighbor didn't want her daughter to know it was going to be hers. So we decorated it and fixed it up. But personally, we didn't have a Christmas tree.
Did that seem odd to you when you were young that you didn't have a tree, or didn't anyone have a tree?
No, not that. But Daddy worked hard, and we didn't have so much money, and so we had to be satisfied with what we got. I got a sled, and sister got books, and I got a doll, and she got this one doll, and they would have Christmas up to that little old red schoolhouse close to Matlock Cemetery. You know where Matlock Cemetery is? Well, that's where she went to school first, and then they would have these Christmas programs, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Did, in the earlier days, people didn't even take the day off for Christmas. Was that always a day off for your father? Did he work on Christmas Day?
No, he never worked on Christmas or New Year's.
Those were days off then.
Of course, well, I feel sure that they didn't have Thanksgiving. They did work on Thanksgiving too.
Did you remember as a little girl out in Choketown going to any of the funerals at Matlock Cemetery?
Yes, and
Whose funeral was it?
well, there was quite a few, and well, one of them was Mrs. Pyle, and she had died, and at that time they didn't take care of the body, and my mother and another friend had to take formaldehyde and put in the underneath the casket, underneath the body, and then they would have to wipe the body, the face and the stuff with that formaldehyde to keep it,
Preserve it.
and to keep it, to preserve it. And as to the funeral, of course, they had these old what they called, they wasn't called ambulances. They had like
Hearse?
hearse.
Yeah. Horse-drawn hearse?
Yeah.
And most of the funerals were from the home? Yeah. And in other words, your mother went over and helped prepare the body
Yes,
and dress the
lots
body?
of times she would help make the shroud. It was most always be dressed in black.
Uh-huh.
And
Be like a sort of a, what's the word I want to use? Shroud.
a shroud. Is
She would. Your mother would help make the shroud.
Make the shroud.
And prepare the body for the neighbors and so forth. And your father probably would make the casket in some cases as a carpenter?
No, I don't know about that. They, well, anyhow, the Matlock Cemetery was given to the city because they owned some land, and his son had died with diphtheria, and they had to bury him at night. And so they see over there. The house is still out there, and so then he gave that land to the Matlock Cemetery. That's why they called it that.
Do you remember when he died?
No, I know
That was before your
wrong.
time?
I know that was too long.
Yeah. Do you remember weddings as you were children in the church?
Well, no, not many, because I was too young. So,
Any other happy occasions that you remember as a child? And
well, I think I love to fish better than anything.
Where would you fish?
Out in the creek and out there at Choketown. We couldn't, but the worst thing that ever happened to me was it had rained, and a sister and I was going to go to town, and we forded the river, and we had the horse and buggy, and I told her, I said, I was afraid. She said, no, we'll go, but we lost the pathway, and the horse was going down the river, and we kids were sitting on the top of the seat so we wouldn't get wet. And then, but finally we got to the place where they go up to them. But,
Was fishing good when you were a young lady?
What?
Was the fishing pretty good then? Just little ones, huh? Yeah, I'll be darned. What else do you have that's of interest? What were we talking about here? What was this?
I told about the toll.
No, you haven't told me about the toll gate. Where was the toll gate?
The toll gate was across from our house there, out there, and they had it extended across like that, and this old man lived there, and so
in other words, this arm would go down over the road.
Yes, and he would chain it down. Well, people coming from town would have to pay a nickel to go through, and people coming this other way would have to pay a nickel. Then there was another toll gate at the end of East Hill Street, just before the other side of the Big Four Railroad tracks. We had to pay a nickel to go to my aunt's and pay a nickel to come back. That was taken care of the road tax. And so I guess...
On this toll gate, do you remember who the toll keeper was out there at Choketown?
Old man Mercer.
And he would come out and get the nickel, or you would have to go to the house and give him the nickel?
Well, and we had to pay even if we didn't go through there, because on account of the road, you see. And, the powerhouse, the waterworks, was way up there, and then they got rid of that, and then they built this other one down here, down on the Waterworks Road. And they dismantled that several years ago.
Part 2, interviewing Mrs. Faye Wakefield. You talk about just ordinary life. Did you know Mark Honeywell by any chance?
Yes, he used to live over here in this house right there.
As I look out the window here, is it that white house with the...
Kenneth Carbondale lives there now.
Yeah.
And,
How did you, what did you first remember seeing Mark Honeywell?
oh, I don't know.
Would he come into the telephone office, possible?
No,
When you-
hardly ever anybody had come into the telephone office.
How about when you worked at the bank? Did you see him when you worked at the bank?
Well, not much, because generally he would be busy or something like that.
You would see him around town, though?
Oh, I've seen him around town.
Yeah. Had you ever met him personally?
No, I never met him personally.
Yeah. Did you know his first wife, Mrs.?
Yes.
How did you know her?
Well, she belonged to the Lutz family, and her sister, Mrs. Vigus, lived next door. And then she had two other sisters, Mrs. Wallace and Mrs. Baber of Peru.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived down there where the Francis Slocum Bank is now.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, I never knew him very much.
I remember that lovely house down there on Market Street, and it was a beautiful house, and I'm sure that in its day must have really been the showplace of Wabash.
Iron fence around.
Yeah. Weren't you telling me one time about Mrs. Vigus and Mrs. Wallace?
No, Mrs. Honeywell.
What was the, I can't remember what the story was.
Well, they had a little fuss, and so Mrs. Sister was sitting here on the porch, and Mrs. Honeywell had been to Florida and came back, and so she saw her, and she threw her hands around her and says, "Oh, Lola, how I'm glad to see you."
Did Mrs. Honeywell then the Honeywells lived across the street when your sister lived in this house here?
Sister lived here since 1914.
Yeah. Did she know Mrs. Honeywell?
Oh, yes. She's very well acquainted with her.
What was your opinion of Mr. Honeywell's success?
Well, I think they were both very lovely people.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, I'm younger, and...
By 15 years.
Yeah, so... and I didn't live in the neighborhood, so...
Do you think that the town has ever recognized Mr. Honeywell for the contributions that he made?
Well, he has done wonderful, and I tell you, he should be getting great credit. Or, well, no one has ever done anything like that, and especially this place down here.
The Honeywell Center? Yes.
Parking lot and everything, and so...
You told me also that you belong to several lodges and like to play cards still.
I never played cards.
Never played cards?
I played solitaire.
Play solitaire, but you never joined in the euchre games or the bridge games or the pinochle or...
Well, the longest I belonged is to the Rebecca Lodge, 66 years. And then I belonged to the Eagles and Moose. And so I dropped the Moose. I can't play bingo anymore, and I love to play bingo.
You see very few people your age now that, of course...
Well, I haven't been going places. I don't go at night at any place anymore, because I'm afraid of falling. And well, to tell you the truth about it, my old friends are gone. I don't, one person I remember is Mrs. Roscoe Moody. She was in high school, and she was in my first year of high school. And other people I don't remember. So
is Mrs. Moody still living?
Yes, she lives at the where that fire house further on North Wabash Street, and the house there on the alley, right across from Walter Hipskin's place. She, her name was shooter.
Do you see her much, or do you talk to her on the phone? or-
No, I don't. And then Mrs. Hetmansberger that lives up here close to the post office, she's living too. But then I never, well, I had to hurry home, and I never, wasn't just, didn't have very many,
Close
much
friends.
contact with
Yeah.
those folks.
Well, I think that's real interesting.
So,
What did you think of the assassination of President Kennedy when you saw it?
well, I think it was awful. It's like, well, it's too bad. People can't live happy, fussing all the time. And, well, I saw President Theodore Roosevelt when he came here to Wabash. And,
What was the occasion?
well, he was running for office, and they had a platform built up catty corner across from the courthouse, and he spoke off this train stop. And then I don't know.
Was that a big day in Wabash when Theodore Roosevelt?
And I saw Richard Nixon and his wife when they were campaigning out here at Spickerville, and they had a big time. I think he was campaigning then for
Something. He was running for something then.
something,
like-
running for something. Oh, they had a big crowd, and they charged 25 cents for us to transfer out to in an old hay wagon, and we went all. What they were doing was they had a new farm up there. They had they're putting these ponds and things in, and he was speaking at that. Oh, had a big time at Spickerville.
Did they? That would have been a big day in
Yeah.
Spickerville. Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting to see these people. Landon came here in 1936. Alf Landon came
Yes.
in 36.
Well, I enjoyed my trips. We also went up through Yellowstone Park and down to Denver. I went up to see Buffalo Bill's grave, and I got the too high temperature, and I had the nosebleed, and so I've enjoyed my life. Of course, we've had a lot of disappointments. Everybody has them.
What would you say your greatest disappointment has been?
Oh, I just don't know.
What do you think your greatest joy in life has been?
I just can't tell you.
Good health, maybe?
I don't know. I've been happy, and well, I might miss something that's the most important. No, I wouldn't know.
Do you keep, at your age, do you keep regular hours?
Yes, try to.
What does your typical day consist of now?
Well, I'm very lonely because I've always been around people, and I can't see so good, and I don't care for television because it broke my vision. So
You get up early?
well, it's according to how I got up this morning about 8 o'clock. I go to bed about 9:30.
You don't take a nap in the daytime?
No. I wish I could, but once in a while I'll go like that.
Just sort of nod your head. Well, I think that we'll bring this little interview to a conclusion, and I want to thank you very much for your thoughts.
Well, I
and-
thank you, but I was scared to death, and I was afraid I wouldn't say the right things at the right time.
Well, we're going to type this, and then we'll give it to you, and someone can read it to you, or you can read it, and then make any corrections you want, and then it's history.
Well, I'll just leave it as it is, because
That's you, huh?
I thank you very much. And, at first, I didn't think I could do it. And I talked to Mrs. Vera Howe, and she belongs to the Historical Society. And she said, "Oh, Faye, do it and tell them," because she said, "I love to hear you tell of things when you come up to my house." I was up there for Thanksgiving for dinner. So,
I hope we didn't leave any stories out that someone would want to hear. Can you think of any others before we
no.
finish? Well, this is George. Okay, now we were just about ready to conclude here, and then you got on to the subject of your parents and how they got here and so forth, and let's go over that again.
Well, my mother was 6 months old when they came from Missouri, and she's born in 1860, and the war was started in 1861. Grandfather was from Rushville, and he went out there. He met my grandmother. She was only 15 years old, and they were married. And they came to Wabash in a covered wagon, and they had to go a lot of. He had a farm, and he heard that they were going to capture the fellows from the north. There was the north and the south, and Grandpa was for the north. Well, he had a neighbor, and this fella put a flag out, and they came along and shot him because he was against the south. And so Grandpa left right away. And,
This was in Missouri?
Huh?
This was in Missouri?
In Missouri.
Yeah.
Oh, I forget what, Vinaville, little town. I can't find it on the map. And then they had trouble with the Indians, and so once Grandpa had to travel by night because they were afraid that they would take him, like they did this neighbor. And so Mama was crying, and Grandpa had to go to take care of the horses. And so Grandma heard the Indians around there, and so she put her finger in her Mom's mouth to make her gag or something like that. And she sat there and cried, and she said, "Oh, my poor baby's dying, my poor baby's dying." Mm-hmm. And the Indians then never bothered her. They went away. Mm-hmm. And then finally they got here to Wabash. And I don't know where they first lived, but they lived out there south of town, southeast of town. Mm-hmm. And
that's real interesting. You described this to me as if you were going to talk to someone that had never seen it before. And what is it that we're looking at?
my sister and I were christened in this dress. It was made by hand, by lamplight. All those tucks were my mother had fixed them. She crocheted this lace by lamplight.
By lamplight.
And you can see for yourself that nowadays babies don't wear such things like this.
Now that's a christening dress, which would be approximately 4 to 5 feet long, isn't it? And well, they wore little bibs when you slobbered. Little tiny bib there, yes.
And
this was a little coverlet right here, or
this was a petticoat.
petticoat that went under the dress, which
This
is
dress.
same length.
And here was a little pillow with all that crochet on.
The crocheting is just beautiful.
Here was a little stockings.
Now they were, you were both Christian, you were both
At the First Methodist Church.
christened at the First Methodist Church.
That's kind of stockings.
There's the
You don't
little
wear stockings.
little baby stocking, also with some kind of fancy work worked into it. That's beautiful.
So some folks want me to take it up to the museum, but
Well, I think that's beautiful. That's a lovely article and garment to have and keep
Well,
these memories.
Sister and mother were very industrious. They were always making fancy stuff. And, so,
Did you inherit their ability and love to sew?
well, no. All I cared to do was to love to play.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, well.
Some play and some work, I guess. Thanks
My
again.
sister was always industrious. She upholstered Davenport. She upholstered all the chairs and things like that. And well, she hand painted, and she was deputy treasurer for Amos Smith, and she worked down here. Her job was down in Indianapolis at State License Bureau. She was cashier
At Indianapolis.
at Indianapolis, and well, anyhow, she was very, very active.
Do you still play the piano?
Oh no,
Not anymore.
my fingers are stiff.
Yeah, good.
So
Thank you. Again, this interview is by George Dingledine. Let's see what we picked out.